All right, the vibes are good. I love the music that they got going on here. I love it. Listen, 2025 will go down as history that AI-assisted development took flight. With advancements in models, code completion, chat integration with agent mode, and now background agents that can literally implement full features while we sleep or when we're on a flight to Lisbon. It is truly an amazing, astonishing time to be a developer. Now, when Amanda asked all of you this morning how many of you are actually doing agentic development, it's 25, 40, 50%, and that is okay. Because at the beginning of this year was my journey to start putting AI in every single aspect of my development, my planning, my DevOps cycle, and everything I do as a PM at work. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about how this year I've written more code in my entire life and more apps in my entire life than I ever have before. And I've done it all with vibes. All we're going to be talking about for the next 60 minutes is straight vibes. We're going to vibe code, we're going to vibe engineer, and we're going to stay in the flow. And we're going to talk about how we're fine-tuning AI development to be your pair programmer that's available on demand when you want it, as much or as little. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How one must not code the code. Now, this year alone, I have truly transformed every single thing that I've built, small and large, and modernized my entire workflow. This year alone, I have shipped into production over 7, 8, 9 applications, so much that I couldn't actually put on this screen. And in new technologies that I've never before used or haven't used in a long time, like WinForms, which is my first job out of college. I just published my first application, which is a Ghost typewriter application alongside Copilot. That was amazing. But I'm shipping Blazor applications, Maui applications, React applications, Vite applications, server, WebAssembly, all the things all the time. Now, what am I building and why am I building them? Well, there's some applications that I like to call apps on demand. A problem to be solved, I need an app now, go. My wife was at a work function and they were playing board games after work and she needed an app to keep track of scores. I'd actually built an app a long time ago, but I pulled it from the App Store because I couldn't keep it up to date. She messaged me and said, hey, is that app still available? And I said, no. 30 minutes later, it was, because I rebuilt it fully with Copilot and shipped it off as a static web app that she could use. The next day, I turned it into a Blazor hybrid application and shipped it to the iOS App Store. A few months ago, I was out playing bingo at a local pub, and the poor guy had his Chromebook there, no shade on Chromebooks, but he was using 18 different websites to do bingo, little scorecards that we would do. I was like, this cannot happen. This is not acceptable. So I went up to Ben afterwards. I said, I'm going to fix all this. Tomorrow, the next day, had a full bingo application ready for him to use. It was amazing. Just within a few minutes, I was able to take a problem that somebody had in my community and solve it. Now, I'm solving my own problems, too. I have a podcast, Merge Conflict and the VS Code podcast. We have all this metrics and telemetry and data, and it's in kind of a CSV format. That's not very friendly. So I vibed out an entire dashboard in under 20 minutes. Now I can get insight, upload my own custom CSVs, and anybody can to get insight to how they're doing. My biggest application, which is a full multi-microservice application that I'm going to talk about today, is Feedback Flow. And it's an application that I developed because we had a problem at work, and I wanted to solve it for David Fowler, so I did it. It's a full Blazor application. I'm going to show it off, and I'm going to tell you why I did it, to do feedback sentiment analysis. Now, many of those problems that I talked about were personal problems, problems that my wife was running into, that I was running into, and I wanted apps, and I wanted to publish more code. Feedback Flow had a few different problems. One of the problems that I have and my team has as a PM is that we ship a lot of content, we ship a lot of features, we ship a lot of products, right? And we post about them across social. When we shipped Visual Studio 2026 Insiders, which is absolutely fantastic, we posted across X, on YouTube, on Mastodon, on Reddit, all from different people as well. And one problem we have is how do we even gather all of this metric and all this telemetry, right? And I could sit down and I could go try to solve this problem, or I could go scrape every single website myself and pull all the comments. And then I thought to myself, a wise man once told me that I only have so many keystrokes left.
I had a friend who said once that he was aware of the number of keystrokes he had left. So you know how old you are, you know how long you can live. You can do the math and find out how many breaths you have left in your chest. How many keystrokes do you have left? I really don't like wasting keystrokes.
I also don't like wasting keystrokes, which is why I became a PM, so I could just hit join Teams meeting, leave Teams meeting, join Teams meeting, leave Teams meeting. Because actually, how much time do I have to develop? The actual part of my job is actually not coding. That's not my job. It's kind of my job. It's what I want to be my job, but it's not my job. Most of the time, I'm just archiving emails. That seems like a productive use of my time and Microsoft's paycheck salary to me. But I'm also doing a lot of other things. Like I'm on a plane. I am archiving emails. I'm responding to emails. I'm presenting. I'm here with all of you. But when we actually survey all the developers out there, they run into the same problem, and I'm sure you do as well. Amanda talked about the context switching. An average developer actually only spends around 14% of their time coding, because we're doing a bunch of other stuff, right? You're also joining Teams meetings as well. You only get a little bit of time. So when Amanda was talking about how Copilot is everywhere, actually Copilot can help with all of these aspects. When we think about it, Copilot is actually that agentic layer that is across the create, collaborate, and operate, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let's take a look at what I actually built, so you can actually see that it's in production. I'm going to head over to my browser, and this is feedbackflow.app. I spent a few dollars on that, and I'm going to go ahead and log in. I can log in with Google or with GitHub. I'm just going to go ahead and log in to my Gmail account. Awesome. Now here we're doing a bunch of authentication with my backend, and I'm good to go. Now a few things here that I'm able to do is I'm able to paste in multiple URLs from any of these places, like Reddit, Hacker News, our dev blogs, Blue Sky. And I found an article that was really interesting, which was this Anthropic prop engineering, and has a few hundred comments. I'm going to take it, post it in there, and say analyze comments. Now, a few things are going to happen here. It's going to go off to the Hacker News API or the YouTube API or the GitHub API. It's going to go grab all those. It grabbed 211 comments and all the threaded conversations. And now it's actually going to go off and use Azure OpenAI and Foundry to go off and analyze those with a custom system prompt to give me a report. So this is going to be hitting my West server, and boom, I get this back. I can speak it back to me, I can copy it, I can export it here to CSV or to Markdown or anything I want, and I get a whole bunch of information here, like a full TLDR breakdown, context, platform information, key insights, a whole big, amazing thing. I could go ahead and save this. I'm going to go ahead and save and share it publicly. I really like confetti.js. It's a problem. Or not. And I'm just going to copy this. So I can now take this, and I can just paste it in, and I have this full analysis that anybody could use right here. It pulls that all back down automatically. I can also come in, I can browse all of my saved reports. That's going to go off, and here's that one that I just saved. I can see other ones coming from Twitter and different information. I can look at reports. So these are weekly reports that get run. Here's one on the .NET Reddit, and I can see the number of threads, comments, post information, table of contents. I get all of this, all automatically. Now, if I want to stay in the flow and I don't want to use the browser, I could come into VS Code, for example, and I have an MCP server that's using the same APIs. I gave it that same article here, and it went off, and it pulled all that information back down to here for me. It gave me a full analysis breakdown, and then I said, run it again, but only get me the comments, and you figure out, Sonnet 4 or whatever I want to do. I now have this information. So I have all this here, and then now, because I have an MCP server, I can just store that data directly inside of VS Code. So I have all this information that I can analyze myself. So it's a pretty full, fleshed-out application, right? So it's not just a little toy. And it's many, many parts. The actual core infrastructure is a Blazor server application, but I also have a local MCP server that's running inside of Docker, and one that's also deployed inside of Azure Functions, so I have a full API available. Those are all speaking to a single Azure function. I'm a big Azure Function fan, not just because Paul might be sitting here in front of me, but I love Azure Functions because it gives me scale on demand, and I don't like to waste money or keystrokes, so I put it in an Azure Function. If no one's using my app, I don't pay anything. Now, the Azure Functions integrates into table storage, storage blobs, Azure AI Foundry, and I even have an email service that goes off and emails me weekly reports basically all the time. It's all Aspire-ified, and it's all using application insights and sucking in all that data. So it's a pretty full-fleshed application, right? And now how I built all of this was 100% with VS Code, and GitHub Copilot. I didn't write a single line of code. Not a single keystroke that I had was inside the editor. everything was prompting, everything was written with me, side-by-side Copilot. So how did I do it? Well, I saw that David Fowler had a repo called Feedback Flow. That seems awesome. So problem solved. David Fowler wrote it. And in fact, David kind of wrote something. He wrote a CLI little tool to get random feedback back on a few different things. So I said, that's interesting. David must want to do something like this. So I contacted David. I said, cool little repo. I wish that you had actually built something full. He's like, you should do that. So I said, okay, I will. I will, David. So I went off, and day one, back in April, I sat down, and I just started jamming. I took his code base, I forked it, and I just started kind of pulling out APIs. I structured the main web application. This is my commit history here. And I wasn't actually doing a lot of archiving of email that day. I was having fun writing some code. So I wrote some code, and day two, I wrote some more code. I added some components, I had some styling, I added the functions backend, I actually deployed the application. And by day three, I sent a demo off to David, and I said, hey, check this out. What do you think? Look, they got light theme, ooh, dark theme support, that looks good. And I had a little segments here that I could tap on things. I could go into Hacker News or YouTube, and I could do the same exact thing like I kind of showed earlier. I took that URL, pasted it in here, and I went off and called it back. So I was able to have a working prototype up in a few minutes, actually. And as you can see here, as we analyze the comments, even then, in April, I was addicted to confetti.js, like every good application should have. All the time, it's just delightful. So then I was like, this is interesting. Let me send it off to Fowler. And he's like, this is good. And I was like, whoa. I think I can retire. A distinguished engineer was like, you made something and it was good. I was like, I'm amazing. And then I showed it to Hanselman, my boss, and I said, I have this. And he's like, you should analyze all the podcasts I'm doing with Mark Rusinovich, who's one of the heads of Azure. I sent it to him, and I was like, hey, I vibe coded this. And he's like, whoa, this is cool. And he's like, was it really vibe coded? And I was like, yeah, I vibe coded. I didn't write a single line of code. And then I sent this response that, wow, Mark thought something that I made and you kind of brainstormed up was cool. And then Fowler was like, wait, what? You didn't write any code? I was like, all vibes. Vibes all the way down. Vibes all the way down. From the top to the bottom, all vibes. So how did I actually do it? You just saw these commits. I said I was coding. And when I'm coding with Copilot, side by side. I'm not writing the code. I'm telling it and reviewing and real-time doing it. And it's because in the beginning of this year, we shipped agent mode. And I went all in. I said, I have this now amazing tool that I have no idea how to use in my toolbox, sitting side by side all my other tools and all my other extensions. How the heck do I use this? So I started like everybody does, and I say, do a thing. And it's something like this.
Just make it more modern. No, not that modern. Maybe a little bit more modern. Think deeper. Try this bottom thing on the bottom that websites have. No thinking aloud. One must not code the code. What am I, a stone man? Vibes only.
So with agent mode, I was like, I only want vibes, right? I don't want to be thinking, but I had to change how my mind worked, right? In our minds, as we're in the flow of development, our minds are working a certain way. With agent mode, I had to think different of how I plan out the prompts that I give it, how I'm working side by side this new amazing tool in my toolbox, because it can analyze my code, it can run commands, it can understand the problem, and it can communicate to other services out there. So when you see things like on the VS Code website, this amazing demo where they're typing something, like what are my open issues, it sends it off, it grabs a bunch of stuff from GitHub, for example, and you're like, oh, cool, I have a bunch of issues here. And then it comes back over, and it's like, yeah, just go ahead and like grab this Figma and implement it. And you're like, wait, what? It's just going to like do the thing that I just asked it to do? Traditionally, I'd go find that Figma, ask my designer, break down, put it in a spec, put it in an issue, like import the code, and like 10 weeks later, I've implemented that design. But now we can provide that context directly to it. So as I kept going, I was frustrated. I was angry. I was like, man, why won't it put the bottom thing on the top thing? Just put it up there. And what I learned is that I needed to improve my way of thinking, my prompting. My code was my prompts before, but now I'm prompting to generate the code. So I had to think about, how do I improve my prompts? How do I add more context? How do I let it know what I want it to do? How can I work with it, draft up my ideas, create a plan and implement that idea, and iterate with it? How can I make it the pair programmer that I am programming side by side every day? And as I started working on this time and time again over the months, it was a lot of highs and it was a lot of lows. Because things are changing all the time, and there's new tools being added to that toolbox as well. So when you are in this mode, things get really complicated, and you get those highs, and you get those lows.
Senior game engine developer. Write me a new to-do list app, please. Good. Really? You're gonna use Node.js for this? No, not Rust. No buffer overruns. No memory leaks. Maybe it does have a future. What did I learn C for? Don't use PHP. Don't use Perl. Don't use JavaScript. You are a 30-year veteran coder from NASA. Why are you rewriting it to Lisbon? Am I allowed to use those images? Who's doing moderation for this site? Is this even GDPR conform? Still not working. You only work on the UI. Rest of the code is holy. You don't touch it. No. Don't come back until you're finished. Great. Why is the bill $400? What does the first line in the requirements document say? Okay, do not, I know you're hallucinating. It's not how lifetimes work. Do not change the color scheme. Oh, no, you don't use clear both on a Flexbox. No, we're not gonna use AWS again. Redis cache.
And you just sit there and you're like, just do it. Come on, I just really want you to do it. And the key is really context, right? If you work with a PM or designer, they're giving you the context, right? And you're implementing the context. Switching our brain to say, how do we work with these LLM models to provide the context that they need? So I'm going to give you my tips and tricks to getting started. What really helped me that first week, that second week, and even up to today, months upon months into this project. And first is personalization. If you ever sat down in your first job, your second job, your recent job, you start to go through the code base. You start to understand the coding conventions. You may have guidelines. You may have certain things in the README that is guiding you towards actually figuring out how to work in a code base. My first job out of college at Canon, I was given a binder. It said, good luck, see you in 1 month. Hope you get it running. That was it. It was 1 month to PR. That was my goal. And it took me about a month to get PR. That was correct. Because I needed to learn this huge code base. I needed to understand it. So just as we're team members to our other team members, we need to be team members to Copilot. So the first thing is enabling instructions that can customize the return from Copilot itself. Custom instructions or Copilot instructions are the core to understanding and telling the models about how you like to work, how the code is structured. It could figure it out, but then it has to do a lot more work. It has to use a lot more context and a lot more tokens. We can guide it. So these are mine for feedback flow. I give it core commands. I give it the development flow of how, where the code lives, my architecture overview of it. Inside of here, what tech stack I'm using, my integrations that I have, and I also tell it about my CSS and my Blazor best practices, right? If I always want my CSS in a razor.css, I tell it that. And then this gets sent with every single request, so it understands how I work, okay? And you can do this all up, or you can do it on a glob format. So if you only want certain things to apply to your Razor or Razor CS files or CSS, you can do that. If you want certain styles for only your APIs, you can do that as well. There's a whole repo called Awesome Copilot that you can find tons of instructions and a bunch of stuff that you're going to see here from Microsoft, GitHub, and the community. Now, these instructions, the Copilot instructions work with Copilot, but there's been a standardization across multiple agents, something called agents.md, which also work with GitHub Copilot and VS Code as well, and a bunch of other integrations out there too. And it's the exact same format, and that all works together as we standardize on this. Now, the second thing is that we're often typing these prompts into a box, but we're often creating new APIs, new components over and over again. Sure wouldn't be great if we had sort of something reusable to reprompt over and over again. Well, you can actually create reusable prompts. Here's mine in the repo for creating a Blazor component. So whenever I'm creating a new component, I give it information about different templates, different output requirements that it has, and I kind of give it the best practices. I tell it about my output requirements when I'm creating this new component. I tell it about the parameters that I want to use, right? I give it the guidance as it is going through this as well. And I even give it how to handle errors, for example, just like you would another colleague. Now, on top of that, there are these things called chat modes. Think about putting the LLM into a mindset. In the video, he's talking about, I'm a senior game developer, I'm a NASA engineer, I'm a back-end API developer, right? You have to work with these models to help them understand. So you can create these custom modes, and you can give it restrictions on tools, which I'll talk about a little bit more. So here, this is one from Awesome Copilot, which is like an expert software engineer that really files everything from Anders and Robert C. Martin and clean code. This is stuff that I would never use at all. TDD, I don't believe in it. It's fine, but if you do, that's great, because your code is your code. Help guide Copilot along the way. Now, on top of this, though, we can give it context, but there's other contexts out there. There's databases. There's our custom data schemes. There's APIs. We can give the models data, but we can also have it retrieve data, and we can also have it perform actions for us. And that's where something called MCP servers come in. I have a whole talk tomorrow about it where I deep dive and show you how to build your own. But MCPs, for all intents and purposes, help connect these LLM models to additional data sources to provide it more context, right? You can give any model a URL, and it could scrape that URL for you, but we can create these MCP little microservices that we can connect to do certain things, like Figma, grab the design, use Perplexity to do deep research, or pull GitHub to go off and, for example, pull all my Azure subscriptions, help me get best practices, create issues for me, open pull requests for me, all from there. And MCP is directly built into Visual Studio Code, and a lot more. And there's tons of things that you can do with MCP servers. One of my favorites is connecting and using Playwright, which Debbie on my team has a talk on later this week, to actually help me automate doing end-to-end testing. And I just tell it, hey, I want you to go and enter a URL and do this flow, and it opens the browser and performs the action for me. So for example, here, what we can see is I'm going off, and I'm asking it to, hey, go find, using Microsoft Docs, a way to optimize my Blazor application. It will go off, call the Microsoft Docs API, and then it'll pull it back for me automatically. It'll grab the context in my code, right? So we have now ways and capabilities of giving structure, giving context, giving additional context. So now we have all of this context, and you're like, James, wow, I have ways of plugging in all this data. So with all this context, everything might work perfect.
Now, given all the wisdom I gave you, my 2 books on software architecture, my 3 talks on why you shouldn't use solid principles, and my 6,300 cursor rules file, I believe in you.
That's where we want to get. I believe in you, and go, because context is magic, and it does just work. In fact, right now, how I have feedback flow set up, I don't even run it anymore. I just tell it what to do, I deploy to staging, and I'm good to go. I haven't run the application on my local machine in several months because I've worked in a structure in a way that I've become one with working with Copilot and the AI and how I work with it just like I would myself or with a colleague, which is awesome. So let me show you this MCP stuff because it seems a little crazy, but I'm going to show you what I would do. So over here, I'm going to go into VS Code, and I go into extensions, and you can do this in Visual Studio as well. In extensions, we see MCP servers here. So we have a few that I already have installed. I have Playwright, I have Microsoft Learn, I have GitHub here, and I'm logged in. And I also have something installed called the Azure MCP server, which is an extension, and also there's an extension called GitHub Copilot for Azure here, which is really cool. So something I could do is go into chat. I'm going to start a new thread, and I'm going to go into a mode that I created called GitHub Minimal, because I have a lot of tools. So when you click on this Tools button, these are all the tools that VS Code and the LLMs can reach into. And you can see I have a lot of things installed here. You don't want to give it too many tools, but I basically just gave it in a subset of like, use only some things from the GitHub MCP and use all Microsoft Docs in here. And if I expand the GitHub MCP, we can see that it can do a bunch of stuff. It can add projects, it can add issues, it can comment, it can cancel workflows, it can create branches. Basically, it can do anything, which is kind of amazing. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to say that prompt from earlier. Go check the Microsoft Docs for Blazor status and like web asset, best practices, and look at feedback flow web app and give me a top 3 list. Okay, So it's going to go off. And here I'm just using, I don't know, a Claude model, but I could use GPT, I could use anything. And it's going to go off, and it's going to run a Microsoft Docs search for me, right? It's going to go off and give it a query. It's going to look for a bunch of stuff here, and it's going to go pull back a bunch of docs. It fetched a bunch of docs here. It knows that I'm a .NET 9 application. I can go query that information for me. And now it's going to analyze my code base. It's going to look at my www root, my CS, my JS, my program, and it's going to go ahead and map a bunch of static assets here for me as well. So it's going to look, and it's looking. It blows my mind. It's like, oh, did you do this? Did you do this? And now it's going to summarize, hey, you should probably go do these things, right? And it's going to give me some information of exactly what I should do in my code base. Here are some top 3 issues for me. I'm like, dude, so rad. Dude, so rad. Wow. Like, this is how I talk to it. Nice. All caps. I love you. Now, go create GitHub issues for me, please. Right? And you can just typo all day. It doesn't matter. It just figures it all out. So now what it's going to do is it's now going to use the GitHub MCP, and what it's going to do is it's going to go create these here. So I can allow, or I can allow always, or in this session. So now it's just going to go off. It's going to create all those issues for me. And this is really cool. Imagine you run into a bug at the end of the day. You can say, hey, go grab the context from the stack trace. Go open a bug for me. I'll go work on it tomorrow, right? So now it's just going to go. It's creating all these for me. And now I can actually go look at this on GitHub, or I could go directly into my GitHub extension here, and I could see my issues and refresh. Let's see if there it is. Perfect. So now I have these issues over here. Boom. Right? It gives me this detail. How many keystrokes did I just save? All of them. Right? It's kind of amazing. So then what I could do is I could say, okay, I'm going to put this into Azure mode here, and I'm going to create a new thread. And all I'm doing here is just giving it now access to my Azure MCP and my GitHub Copilot. I could say, hey, go tell me how I have deployed this application to Azure. Look for feedback item or feedback resource names, and tell me if I have improvements, please. Right? So now what it's going to do is it's going to go off, fingers crossed, and it's going to go analyze my deployment here, and it's going to go call at Azure, and it's going to summarize this. It's going to look for Azure best practices, and it's going to look here for general Azure best practices, which is calling the Azure MCP. Those can update all the time, right? Context is always changing. This is pretty cool. The Azure MCP is actually going to do back and forth with the LLM. The MCP servers can use the LLM to do back and forth conversations. So it's going off. It's going to have a conversation with GitHub Copilot here. I'm going to allow this for the session here. There we go. It's going to go back and forth. It's going to look at my code base. It's going to understand best practices. It's like, hey, you got an Azure function here. Let me understand your Azure function best practices. It's going to go look and query my resource graph inside of my Azure database here, because I've logged in with Azure. I've logged in with GitHub. I've given it permission here to do this. So hopefully it does it. Amazing. For each of these requests, I can open it. I can see exactly what was returning for me. And you can notice it just get a bunch of text, right? LLMs are really smart. They can figure out and parse all of this data up there. So now it's going to go. It's going to look at all my services and Azure Functions apps. Every step along the way, I'm in control, right? When I'm in the flow, I'm reading and understanding what it's doing. Now it's calling the app service capabilities. It's understanding my application. This one's calling the function app. It's understanding my Azure functions that I have deployed here, right? And then this one is going to do the same for my other Azure functions that I have deployed here. Looks like that one failed. I'm just going to go ahead and say allow here. So it's going to basically call this over and over again to kind of get that entire context that it may need for this code base. It really wants to know everything. So now it's going to call my storage accounts. So go. There is a YOLO mode, but I'm not going to put in YOLO mode. I'm just going to let it do its thing here. So now it's going to understand my storage capabilities. And I've given it a pretty complex task. Imagine I go to any of you and say, hey, figure out how this is all deployed. You just joined the job, and figure out what best practices we need to improve, right? That's pretty hard to actually go and do ourselves, right? But now it's going to understand the code base. It's going to understand my deployment. And now it's also going to understand any of my deployments in the graph. It is really going, and it's doing a lot of requests, which is great. And hopefully, it will come back and tell us improvements that we need to do. I gave it maybe a little bit too big of a request, but that is okay. Perfect, cool. So it now gives me analysis of all my deployments. Here's all my functions. There's my backend, there's my MCP server. It understands that I have supporting services that are going on here. It knows all my storage accounts, staging and prod. And then here, oh, key issues. Uh-oh. Ooh, yep, problem, right? So I can now understand this and say, okay, like what are some recommendations? What are the improvements? What are the things that I should do from a security standpoint that I've done here, right? Now, I've deployed this in a way that this is James' deployment, so I could go do this. So now I could do the same thing. Hey, can you go help me like upgrade this? And I could work side by side as I work with it and improve and open those GitHub issues, right? So that context is really important that we give it, right? And that's just some of the capabilities of MCP. It's just like really amazing to be able to pull all these things together and work with the LLM. Once it has the knowledge, I can iterate with it. I could break down that problem, and I could integrate and say, oh, where in the code base should I change this? How should I change this? And go back and forth. Now let's talk about models. I don't know, it's Monday, it's probably like a new model like in 2 hours, right? There's models all the time. We're always like, the new model is the best model. And in fact, I actually say love all the models. There's so many models all the time, whether it's a GPT, whether it's a Claude, whether it's a Mini, whether it's whatever. Use the job for the tool and figure out what models you like to work with. I actually personally work the most with GPT-5, and then for some deep research and deeper, I'll work with Sonnet 4.5 or 4. I often work with Mini because it's free unlimited requests. That's what that zero multiplier means. If you got a Copilot Pro account, just keep using it. It's free. Go, and these are 1x multipliers. That's a premium request. When you saw I sent a prompt until the end there, it worked for like a few minutes. That was one premium request, right? A Pro account has like a bunch. Pro Plus has like 1,500, so like lots of those. So there's a lot of models all the time that are coming out. Now the other thing is that you can also bring your own models too. There's tons of models, and obviously inside of GitHub Copilot, the team provides a bunch, but you can connect if you have your own Anthropic key or OpenAI key or Gemini key or OpenRouter key, or even want to run things locally on your machine with Azure AI Foundry Local or Olama, you can do that too and run any model at all. Now, you might be thinking, well, James, you're right. It's a new model, it's a new week, new JavaScript framework, everything just changed. I got to change immediately.
They changed the model. I just learned 3.7.1. Everything I know is now invalid.
And that's how you'll feel. But it's okay. You don't have to change the model immediately. Give it some time. In fact, I would recommend not using the model day one because everybody's trying to use the model day one, and the latency isn't that great. So don't feel like when there's these new models that you need to adopt them like immediately right away. Now, each model does work differently. GPT really likes to be given a specific task at hand and think about that task and go to town. Claude is like a playful senior software engineer in a beautiful garden and just like, oh, what's over here? Oh, you got tests over here? Oh, it's over here. And it just likes to do everything. And you didn't even think that you knew that you needed to do a thing, and then it did the thing. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. Now you're saying, James, wow, you show me a lot of VS Code and Visual Studio has this integration, all these other IDEs have this integration, this is great, but I love the command line. How many people love the command line? And there's a few of you, not me, but we got you covered because we have the GitHub Copilot CLI. Boom, Copilot, you're good to go. Copilot's everywhere, right? You just install this puppy, and you can just open a folder in it, and boom. You can ask it in any language, anything you want to do, to just have a full conversation. Everything that I just showed you, it can run commands. You can have a full conversation with it. You can connect to MCP servers. You can have it generate code. It gives you inline diffs, everything that you want along the way. So recently I did a little demo here, and that's my dog over here, where I just opened up Copilot, and I said, hey, let's jam. Right? And here I'm just on Windows. It supports Mac, Linux, WSL. And you can do a bunch of things in here. So I can just assign a model. There's a few models available. I switch over here to Claude Sonnet. And I'm working on that podcast analytics application. So I asked the same thing. Hey, give me an overview of this specific TSX file that you generated, and I have no idea what's happening. And it gives me a full breakdown of everything inside of here, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, I can read about everything I want to do, and then I can, let's say, add a new feature here for like syntax highlighting on this blog post here. So I can reference files, I can attach images, and I'm also going to tell it to update the current code blocks. I ran this a few times, and sometimes the first time I ran it, I just said like, hey, go do that, and then it did it, but it didn't actually like update the code blocks, so I told it to go update the code blocks. Now it's editing files, and it's doing a bunch of stuff, and there's some bugs that they already fixed in this build. And then boom, I can just tell it to npm run dev, and it's just going to go ahead and run it here, and then I can just open it up, and I'll bring over my browser. Boom, there's my app. And if I go into the blog post here at the bottom, there we go. Boop. We can now see that I have like syntax highlighting that were added into this blog post for me automatically, which is really cool. And then you're saying, wow, James, everything seems to be running locally on your machine. What are these models doing? It seems like they're doing a bunch of stuff. And you're like, wait, not on my machine. In fact, you can run Copilot everywhere, including not on your machine or on your machine inside of a dev container, which is super powerful. But inherently, these coding assistants are not just inside of your editor. They're not just inside of a dev container. They're with us at all times, and they can run everywhere. There's synchronous, which is what Amanda was talking about today and what I just showed you. I ask it to do something, it returns. And then there's asynchronous, so these coding agents, these background agents, which enable you to hand off tasks asynchronously. You can tell Copilot to go do a thing. You can open up GitHub, assign an issue directly to Copilot, and it'll get to work for you. You can open the GitHub app. You can start a new agent task right away. Here I'm assigning it to Copilot. You can also do code reviews as well on PRs. It will get to work for you. You can do it from the CLI. You can say, agent, go ahead and create this thing. And it'll go off and do it. It'll understand the code base for you. You can do it from inside of VS Code. You can spin up new coding agent sessions and delegate the work directly to the coding agent here. And it's going to now go off, and it's going to start implementing some code here, which is really cool. If you have to-dos in your code base, delegate them to the coding agent. I ain't got time to do this right now. Do it later. Delegate it off. Whenever you delegate something into Copilot, it creates a pull request on your behalf for you automatically. And I do this all the time. This is literally my code base, where I'm just having tons of things being worked on all the time for me. You get a full session log. You can interact with it in real time. And when I say I use this all the time, this is my pull requests. These icons here are who did it. Now, it's by me. I'm in control of it because I assigned it to Copilot, but Copilot is the one that's doing all this work for me all the time. I also work by assigning it awesome issues. Here I've created, I want an entire admin dashboard here. So I said, give me this information. I worked with Copilot to draft this. I didn't write these words. I just had it analyze the code base on what a dashboard would be. And we generated this issue like I showed you earlier. And then I assigned it to Copilot. I started implementing the feature. I picked up, I actually did come back, I brought the code locally into VS Code, I iterated with Copilot, and then I deployed it, right? And I worked with AI. I went in here, and as we were coding, I was just like, yeah, this looks good, and in fact, no, that doesn't look good. I said, at Copilot, fix this thing. At Copilot, fix this other thing. So I'm reviewing these code changes in real time as it's coming in, right? So I'm able to see this, and then finally, when I'm ready, I'm able to deploy. So here, once we finished, I'm good to go, and there we go. We're good to go. And that's a pretty big, complex code base. So let me show you how to delegate this off. OK. Oh, and if you're interested in that dashboard, let me go into /admin. There we go. This dashboard is very pretty. As long as I still have internet. Perfect. There's my dashboard. And with that single prompt, I got all this. Basically, got all this dashboard, user distribution. I got emails that get sent to me every single week, usage charts, everything like that. So let's go in here, and I'm going to go in, and I'm going to start a new chat. I'm going to say, let's do agent mode. I'm going to do, GitHub minimal. There we go. I'm going to say, hey, can we is there a way to optimize, and I'll zoom this for y'all, optimize the admin page dashboard for mobile, question mark. Don't write any code. Don't do it. In fact, you could go into ask mode here, and that it wouldn't generate any code. In fact, I'm going to do that just so it doesn't write any code. That's safe zone, right? So it's going to go look at my code base. It's going to say, hey, there's a few ways to do this. All right, it's going to look at my code base. It's going to analyze all this for me. That looks good. It's going to read this admin dashboard for me. That's cool. And then hopefully it comes back and gives me a few examples of what I need to do. So it's going to look at all the widgets and understand stuff, right? So if we were understanding the CSS and we were going through stuff, it may have to take a lot of time to figure out exactly how and what I would need to do to optimize this code base. So it's going through, it's looking at the mobile navigation system, and then it gave me some information here, right? So there's a few things that I could do at this point. I could just say, okay, let's do this, right? I could switch back to agent mode over here and say, cool. And I could say, let's do it. But what I'm going to do once it finishes doing this is I'm going to go and I'm going to delegate this to the coding agent. So I have the GitHub pull request extension installed. And when I do that and I've enabled the GitHub coding agent, my GitHub Copilot settings, I can delegate to the coding agent. So I'm going to say, let's do that. And now it's going to analyze the chat. And it's going to take that chat history and it's going to work with that to understand what context I need to do. And it's going to say, hey, do you want to include any changes or that is on this branch? Maybe I started working on it already. Do you want to bring those changes with you? I'm going to say no. I've been working on some playwright tasks. Ignore those changes. I'm going to say I want to go and do it on my origin. And now it's going to delegate that task off to the coding agent. And what's going to happen here is that the coding agent is going to spin up a new pull request for me. And I should be able to see that here inside of it. And while that's going, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my GitHub app, and let's say, right now the application only, wait, oh, that's an Apple thing, not a me. Okay. Right now the application only has light theme and dark theme. What I would like to do is add a system default theme option that uses whatever the user's OS is alongside when they click basically light theme, dark theme, and then system theme. Let's go do that. Cool, I'm just going to assign that to the coding agent just from my phone, and boom, it's going to spin that off. Again, I'm just working a whole bunch here, and now I can see a pull request has been opened for me, and actually it opens the chat for me. This is a remote chat. This pull request is happening on GitHub. I can go ahead and I can actually see more. Here it's going to open the pull request directly inside of VS Code. I can see that the pull request here is being on the branch that I'm working on, which is the playwright branch. And here I'm going to go ahead and optimize the admin dashboard. I could check out this code in real time. I could cancel the coding agent. We can see that here's the view session, but the session's happening here. So it's doing a bunch of stuff. It's going to get to work, and things are going to happen, basically, right? If I come over into my chat sessions, which is this little dialog here, what we're going to see is that I have that coding agent that's spun up here for me. And if I wait long enough, hopefully my agent task actually did spin off over here as well. There we go. Add system default theme. I had internet for about 10 minutes as I ran in Philadelphia from one terminal all the way to 2 terminals. It was a 20-minute walk run, and I had 20 minutes until we started boarding. And I was on the plane, and I had an idea, but I didn't have internet on the plane. So I got off the plane, I had internet, so I opened my GitHub app, and I did it. And then when I got off the plane in Lisbon, I reviewed it because it was in staging, and then I merged it. I was coding while I fly, but not coding at all, right? So this is all happening in real time, which is really amazing. This all happened. In fact, if you go to my repo here, you can actually see this happen. You can look at my pull requests. You can see those pull requests that are happening. And you can look at the recently closed one here. And this one is the add a multi-select feature to the content. And this is one that was happening as I was flying in. I had this idea of adding checkboxes. So now when you actually go into this feeds, I could search, for example, like the GitHub Copilot Reddit. And now what I'm able to do is go in and like multi-select these and then automatically just analyze those in real time, which is pretty cool. And it just wrote all the code, did everything for me. Sorry about the light theme, dark theme change. But it just did all this for me. And I tested it in staging, good to go, boom. Just, amazing feature done in this state that I have, right? Okay. So I'm delegating these off. Those are going to take time. The cool thing about coding agents, they got time, right? When I'm inside of the IDE, I don't got time. Well, I do, but the LLMs inside of VS and VS Code or JetBrains or anywhere else you're using GitHub Copilot, it works everywhere. IntelliJ, works in Xcode, it works in Eclipse, it works everywhere, is that it wants to be urgent. It has urgency. It's like, you want to do this, I will try to do it as fast as humanly possible. So it tries to not necessarily take skips and jumps, but it tries to be urgent, right? It tries to do that. The cool part about coding agents is that may take 5 minutes, it may take 10 minutes, it may take a half an hour, it may work for an hour. I got time, I'm assigning it work, I'm working on other things. I have all of these ideas so we can go and do this, right? So here's a case study. This is actually from our team's conversation. David here was like, hey, this is like in April or May. David was like, hey, Damien, go try this out. He's like, cool. I want a shareable URL, which you saw. And I was like, I have a save button. He didn't respond, so that meant I better go implement it. So I created an issue, Fowler, assigned to Copilot, and then literally 2 hours later, I was like, boom, done. And I gave it the next morning to Damien when he was back online, and he said, what a time to be alive, right? Shipped and implemented a feature that had a lot to do. That was doing back-end integrations. It was doing database storage. It was creating shareable URLs with security on top of it. And it was deploying that all for him, all in real time with coding agents. And I literally did it, like I said, for this presentation. And every time I give this presentation, I always want to add a new feature. When I have multiple URLs, I wanted to kind of have this toggle. So I just said, hey, how would I add this? Copilot drafted it up, and then it implemented it. Now I have this cool toggle. So if I have multiple URLs, I can include full reports, individual reports over and over again. And then you're saying, James, wow, you're in greenfield apps. Wow, what a life that you have. Just creating new apps all the time, right? What about existing code bases? Well, at some point, this Vibe-coded app became a real application that I was paying real money in my Azure subscription for. And at some point, I needed to change from my POC, my proof of concept that was using a hard-coded string as the password, to real authentication. Now, how many of you have implemented OAuth from scratch, right? Not using like Auth0, not using actually doing it yourself. Okay, that was fun. Everyone has fun. Everyone else that didn't raise your hand, you're like, someone else did it for me, so I don't have to worry about that. And that's a nice life. No, it's not that easy. It's super hard. It took me about a month. This is the single PR. I drafted up a big issue. I researched the Microsoft Docs. I did everything. And as you can see here, I actually opened this on July 1st. That's when the initial coding agent got to work, and I merged it on August 5th. I had a deep conversation, just like I would another team member, on this over and over and over again. This is a complete refactoring. It was completely changing everything about how the application worked. And I changed over 195 lines of code, and I changed tens of thousands of lines of code. And that was okay. I worked over and over on it. I was able to refactor this entire application up, right? So now we're saying, hey, we've learned, we got context, instructions, prompts, modes, MCP servers, models, coding agents, CLIs. We can plan, we can iterate, and everything is amazing.
All right, whatever. I'll just go back to manual. Open Vim. My happy place. Can I optimize the loading?
Here are some ways to optimize your Vim.
How could I optimize the loading? I don't know. You're the AI. I was hoping that you would know. I like that. Approve.
Approve. And that's kind of my life, is review, iterate, idea, ideate, plan, draft, review, approve, over and over and over again. In fact, I've been doing that for the last 20 years of software development. I just did it in a different way before, by myself, in my office. And now I have this amazing pair of programmers side by side me. And now you're saying, James, vibes sound good, but we all can't be vibing all the time. I want specs. I want details. I want all the things. And what was shown off this morning in the keynote was Spec-Kit. And I've actually shown you a few of these ways already. You can create specs, just create GitHub issues, and then assign it. Those are specs, right? But Spec-Kit goes a little bit further. Spec-Kit is an entire way of working with any different model to actually build out spec-driven software that is integrated into your application. Now, I'm not going to go too deep on here because there was a deep dive, but I'll go a James way of talking about Spec-Kit. This is not how I work. Maybe this is how you work, and that's okay. Everybody vibes differently. Maybe your vibes are specs. So the Spec-Kit, right, is all about putting features and specs and ideating to create product-driven scenarios rather than just vibing. So when you create this, it's going to give you these different, basically, prompts. A constitution, a way to specify an idea, plan an idea, implement tasks, and then actually implement them. And you can clarify, you can analyze, you can create checklists as well. So when you do this, it gives you a bunch of information inside of your actual repo. So you have all these prompts, all those things that I just showed you. And then it gives you a bunch of templates. In this case, I'm a big PowerShell user, so I do PowerShell. And it gives you all these templates. And you can see these are things that we would normally create, like a spec template, a plan template, a task template. It gives it a way of giving it structure, okay? And when you do this, in this instance, I was creating an application for photo gallery application. And I said, create principles focused on code quality, testing standards, user experience, and performance requirements. Now, mostly I would just kind of cross out the testing part, but besides that, that's probably what I would write. And it gave me, like, here's what I believe. Now, I can then work with it, and I can say, what are my principles, right? What do I want to work with? And then you start implementing these commands. You say, hey, specify or specify, which is, I want to build this type of application. You create a plan, which is, how and what technologies do you want to use? I want to use a Blazor WebAssembly app, for example. And then you say, give me some tasks. And then it creates an entire structure for that feature, for that app, for that bug fix, whatever you want. It goes in, it says, I want to build an application, I want to add this feature, I want to do this thing. It understands the contracts, the requirements, the guides, the research, the spec, and the task for you. And then you can actually get that implementation plan and get to work. So here's the plan, here's the technical content. I would be reviewing all of this, like with my team. I would then look at the task list and what it would break down, the requirements along the way, and if I can do parallelized structure here, and then it would get to work. So here, for example, I've sped this up, but we take all that information, we implement it, and this implementation from scratch took a little bit of time, but it goes off and it just now is implementing all of that end to end. It's doing unit tests, playwright tests, it's doing functional tests, it's scaffolding the application, it's doing all of my required implementation over and over again. And this is just one big prompt going. It's self-healing as well. It's building, it's doing all this. And then when I'm ready, I have all my memory, I have all my templates, I have everything inside the specification that we saw earlier over here. And then I have my code. So here I have my full Blazor application. I have all my contracts, all my tests, all my unit tests, all my playwright tests, all the things. And then I have a fully functioning website over here that I'm able to go in, create photo albums over here. This is beach. That's my dog. Cute. That's a vibe. That's a beach vibe. I can go in. I can create new photo albums here, upload it, all write this, right? Now I'm in charge of actually reviewing all this code and doing everything as well, right? And now you're saying, wow, James, that's cool. Like, I love specifications, but, my application's, written in VB6. How do I modernize that? I got a .NET Core 3.1 application. I got a .NET 8 application. I'm ready to move to .NET 10. How do I migrate and modernize our applications? Well, think of GitHub Copilot as one agent. Agent mode is an agent in a box. All those modes that I created my own sub-agents. Those chat modes are really agents. I gave it kind of a GitHub agent. I gave it an Azure agent. Basically how I want to work with it. And what the team has gone off and created is a Java and .NET migration agent. There's specialized agents that you can run in VS or VS Code that help you migrate and modernize your .NET and Java applications. I'm not going to do this in real time, but I have a very fancy video. It's got a good vibe to it as well. When I was making this slide deck, I just had it loop for like an hour, and like in my background, I just like loved it, and I love this song over and over again, whatever they did. So there's all of these agents that we can start integrating into our workflow, right? And what I want to leave you with is that I just started. I've been a software engineer for the last 20 plus years. Written a whole bunch of different programming languages, front end, back end, mobile, desktop, servers, functionless, all this stuff, right? Worked in big production code bases, small production code bases, little tiny micro applications, things that I want right now. And what I really want to let you know is that any time you start that journey is the perfect time to start that journey. I just started it really in February, revolutionizing how I build software with these new tools in our toolbox. And whether you use one thing today that I helped inform you about of how I iterated my workflow, or you start to use all of the things, what you really got to know is that nothing is impossible. And at the end of the day, you can truly do anything. Just tell it to do what you want it to do. It will do it. I told my wife, as she was working on this problem, I said, hey, Copilot can be used for anything. You can have it do commit messages, PR summaries, code reviews. You can ideate with it. You can create issues. You can debug. You can profile. So she was running into this issue that was returning a 401 error on the Swagger and this API. And she couldn't figure out the debug breakpoint in her .NET API. I couldn't figure it out. I was like, I don't know. There's no exception being thrown, but there's this. I don't know. Just copy the error. Just go into ask mode, ask Copilot. Say, here is where it's happening. Just ask. I'm like, I know it sounds silly. I try. I'm like, I'm not trying to tell you that AI is going to solve everything. Just tell it. Tell it. She did it, and she was like, oh, like here's the problem. It's like Entity Framework has this thing with foreign keys, and you didn't do this thing. You didn't do this thing. And this, do you want me to do that thing? And she's like, yeah, do that thing. And then it like worked. And she's like, cool, that just saved me a few hours, right? That was a small thing. I have this problem. What is the problem? Help me find the problem, debug the problem, go into this mode, right? She could have figured it out. Maybe it took her 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Maybe it took her a day, right? Who knows on the debugging cycle? She was already an hour deep, and boom, it's there. So remember, when you're coding, you can use Copilot in every scenario. And no matter what, just sit there and vibe out.
Vibes only. Vibes only. Vibes only. Vibes only.
So with that, I'll leave you with a few good reads. And I have a few minutes here, 2 minutes for Q&A, or you can find me afterwards. But check out Copilot. If you're using business or enterprise, the first thing I would tell you to do is go check your Copilot settings and make sure you turn on new models and yell at your IT department. So if you don't see GPT-5 or Claude Sonnet 4.5, your IT department has lock on that. If you're on a solo, go ahead and do that there. Check out the app mod. Check out my GitHub. Check out SpecKit. And I also implore you to read Simon Willison's great blog on Vibe Engineering and how he's thinking about doing that. So with that, thanks everyone, and have a good Azure Dev Summit.